Thanks. I'll just, make, if it's fine with you, RP, I'll just make few points
Sure.
um, based on the topic. Firstly, thanks for having us. I really hope this is the right fora for me to speak as I discussed with you, and I'm hoping that something that I'll say will be useful to your audience. So my first point I was thinking about is that distinction between news and content itself. And I think that's very important to make upfront that, news is a very different, one could contest if you should even call news a content. But I would argue that news is probably a subset of content, but is a very distinct in the sense that we like to say that we are the fastest moving consumer good, if you were to define it, in the sense that unlike a content that, let's say, a Netflix, an MX player, or a Spotify generates, we have a very limited shelf life. And that comes with its own excitement and also its challenge. So, if MX player or Amazon or something releases a new movie or TV series or something, that's going to work for them for months, if not years. Most of our content, if I'd call it a news pieces, dies in few hours. Some last few days. But so therefore, that's one key distinction between a news organization rather than a larger content organization. Um, but Times of India, as some of you might know, it's more than 180-year-old organization. It's 182 years actually as a print product. So if you count in terms of number of generations, and if you take 20 years as a generation, we have been in the minds of some of our readers for at least 9 generations. That's a huge advantage. That's a huge brand recall. And more importantly for us in the newsroom, people who make news, who make content, it gives us a huge legacy of print archives, pictures, explainers that we can build. Now, being a legacy organization, like in any other industry, it comes with certain process rigidity, I would say. But I think overall, the advantages are far outweighs, and I'll sort of talk about some of them just now. I think for us, which we grew out in digital, we grew out of our very strong print legacy, which continues to build itself and thrives. As some of you may be knowing, in terms of circulation, we are the world's largest circulated newspaper. We come out of 60 plus cities. So why I'm saying all this is uh, that we have newsrooms, I mean, in terms of newsroom presence and feet on the ground in English language, we are far outweighing anybody else. And that actually has its own challenges, and which I think many of people in your forum will be feeling similar to us, and also strengths. And I think one challenge is that how do you balance local and national? How do you cater to readers across India, both with our print publications and digital reach, which has the right mix of local, right flavor of a local, along with enough of national, international, um, and I think that's in print. It was very somewhat easier, not very easy, but somewhat easier because you had local editions, and you could strike a balance by deciding how many pages for local, how many news, how much news for national and global. In digital, it's a slightly different because it's the same app, it's the same website, and it's the same limited space on the screen. How do you offer? So for example, we offer close to about 2,500 to 3,000 pieces of news content every day on our digital platform in English alone. And now our app offers 14 different languages other than English. So if you have this hose pipe of nearly 3,000 pieces of news every day, how do you make people discover that content, and you discover the right way, in the sense that a person in Chennai is getting enough of Chennai, if person in Nagpur getting enough of Nagpur, but yet that person is getting enough of national and global that we have to offer. So I think balancing between national and local is a huge challenge, but it's also a huge advantage because we have enough of both. So it's the discovery that we need to sort of display. How do we display? How do we use social media? How do we use backend logarithms to figure out which markets to offer how much of what? um, I mean, just to give you some live examples right now, there is a disproportional interest in all news items related to Kamala Harris in India. But even within India, Tamil Nadu is reading far more of Kamala Harris than people outside Tamil Nadu, and it's for obvious reasons. So how do we offer that? How do we offer the right proportion of Kamala Harris news items to Chennai and Tamil Nadu audience, and somewhat less to other southern states, and then even less to, let's say, non-southern states, and yet give enough to everybody? And again, from today's news list, another example of firecracker bans. More and more states, Delhi banned firecracker today, but it's terrible news for Shivkasi, right? Shivkasi in Tamil Nadu produces huge amount of firecrackers. So how do you cover that perspective versus the perspective of environment, COVID, impact of firecrackers on COVID, infections? Delhi has its own added problem of huge air pollution at this point in time. So I think we have a very interesting challenge, whether it comes to US elections or to firecracker and everything in between, to be able to offer each category of audience what they need and yet a little more. I think we also have a very interesting challenges of uh, of 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 building print and building digital at the same time. We are still a very strong print product. I mean, we have fairly strong presence in television and radio also, but I'm not going there because they are very distinct. Print and digital are somewhat closer. As I said, we have 60 plus editions. All those editions, you can hypothetically think that they are competing with digital. So therefore, we have competition within our own ranks. But I think we have so far been able to make a very clear distinction between the unique advantages that a 8 column or a 16 column broadsheet newspaper gives to the reader versus which is curated and built for one time, somewhat more leisurely reading versus our digital presence, which is giving you a continuous update and sometimes very in-depth pieces, and more importantly, in multimedia. And I think that gives me to the next form, which I think many industries are facing, that the news, like any other content, is acquiring new forms and new shapes. But I think unlike other forms of content in news, the profusion of forms and especially the shapes and forms is even more. And let me explain what it means, because most people understand the forms, new forms, whether it's new devices. So you have to cater to um, a, a, a 1,000 rupees feature phone device versus say 75,000 iPhone 12 device, and how are you offering the best news in across all these devices, and then of course desktop, laptop, and iPads and tablets. That's well understood, and that's a technology question, but that's also a newsroom questions. Am I giving headlines? Is my headline has number of words that will fit into a feature phone screen versus does not shortchange the highest end smartphone screen? So sometimes catering to different devices and different forms is not just a technology. It is a huge technology question, but it's also a journalistic question. It's also a newsroom question. As I said, how am I writing it? How short and crisp is my first paragraph? How good is my headline? Can it fit into the smallest screen versus the widest screen and yet give equal curiosity value for people to come and read? Is something that changes the craft of journalism as much as changes the technology that powers our journalism. Um, while form is better understood, I think new shapes of news content is less understood. And by shapes, I mean a pure news versus explainer news. There is a huge profusion in the last 2 3 years of genre called explainers, which is because there's so much of fake news, there's so much news, that how do I understand? And therefore, there is this new huge expansion of explainers, and we have, like most of the news organization, we've expanded, invested a lot in building explainers, adding it to the hard news. Um, and podcasts, explainers come in print form, in video form, in audio form, in motion graphic forms. And where it becomes a repeat and where it becomes complement, you also have to decide. And these are the live issues in the newsroom for us. So I think getting into both new forms and shapes is a very interesting challenge, and we are living that challenge right now. Um, I think last couple of points that are very critical for news form of content is that, this rise and establishment of new frenemies, and I'm talking about Google, Facebook, social media, and search, because as some of you must be knowing, all across the world for news organizations, it's very difficult to decide at what point distribution platforms like Google, Facebook, uh, to what point they help you and at what point they start hurting you. Because clearly they up your distribution game by several notches. And but for a large organization like Times of India, which already has a very solid distribution machinery behind it, how much is it helping, how much is it hurting is a very live question. Because over a period of time, search engines have led to a situation where content loyalty was becoming stronger than brand loyalty, because you would go on Google search or Facebook page and find a link to a news item. You don't need to come to the home page. It's like, somebody entering the living room of your house or innermost shelf of your shop without coming from the front door. And suddenly you are sitting in your living room and your guest is right inside your living room without your opening the door. Which means that, so how do you handle the challenge now? The challenge to get the brand loyalty back. And I think there are very interesting models that we are seeing in house as well elsewhere in the world, which is helping you strike the right balance between not diluting your brand loyalty with more authenticated content, with better editorial supervision, so that you get the best of your frenemies, which frankly you can't ignore. I think another critical point that we have realized, like most other industries, is simply being more digital, right? So when you go digital, taking first two steps in digital seems very easy, because all your content from non-digital platform moves to digital platform. But what happens after that? What kind of audience discovery? How many shapes and forms are you friendly? How robust is your tech backend? Have you invested enough in user interface and user experience? um, um, and what you're learning in real time from your user experience and user interface platforms, how quickly is it being conveyed back to news producers? Are you training them enough, or are you giving them tools to absorb that and adapt to that? I think that's where Times of India is at the cusp of. We have invested a huge amount, and seeing that comes on. I mean, just to give you a quick example of the most relevant tech issue right now is automated story creation. Can softwares create a certain type, very basic type of stories, which helps you create a very long tail of personalized news content, almost at zero marginal cost, so that your manpower is used to create really high-end content. So, for example, if somebody is in, I mean, pollution right now, air pollution is a big issue in India. So, can you automate small stories on pollution to be auto-served in 200 cities where Times of India has its readers? And so in 200 cities, when readers get up, they can see a proper 3-4 paragraph story with graphics on pollution, on traffic, on so many local issues. So you are able to personalize better because of technology. So I've just highlighted these key points. I mean, on and on, because we are living these issues. But I think the sum total of all this is that future of news is very bright. I'm saying that because there is a lot of discourse that digital has challenged the news, both the business models and the newsrooms of news media in a very substantial way. Yes, those challenges are there, but there's no doubt that future of news storytelling and future of news is very bright. I would personally say that it's brighter than its past. We have far better tools to tell our stories in a far better manner than ever before. We have very encouraging business models developing through subscription route, that hold a lot of good promise and have started yielding results even in reality. And I think if we have the right mix of experiment and experience, and in Times of India, that is what it is. We have abundance of experience because of our nearly 200 years of legacy, and we have abundance of experiment, the spirit of experiment. I think if we balance these two right, we will reap very rich rewards of the brighter future that lies ahead. So I'll pause and stop there, Happy, and I think then we can take it any way which you want.
Thank you very much, Rohit. I think, let me see, first of all, if we have any questions from the audience.
Sure.
And yeah, I was expecting this question. Uh, should brands ride controversies? So I think they mean to say, while advertising, should they ride controversies?
Yeah, no, Happy, it's a very, as you said, you were expecting, and it's a very alive question because now, thanks to social media, everything is a controversy. And you have 5 controversies a day. Earlier, you had one controversy in 5 days. So, no, I think it's our experience, and Times of India has been witness to so many brands getting into controversy, and we have our own share of controversy. I think what we have learned is that you almost should never you should almost never not address a controversy, because very quickly a fake narrative will build around you, and it just ramps up, and then it sort of starts acquiring a proportion that then takes much longer to address. So it's very and my own personal experience in past brands is that you have to quickly address, even if you don't have all the answers to address the controversy that is building. You have to go out with a very basic minimum truthful answer, saying that right now we are in the process of finding out more, and as we find out more, we are coming back to you, so that you douse the at least 80% of the fire immediately, and the remaining 20% you prevent from spreading. But then you have to be truthful to what you have said, that I'm finding out more and I'll come back. What happens when you find out more? You realize that yes, you were in error somewhere, and you were not in error somewhere else, and you just put it out. Say, look, we made a mistake at place A, B, and C, and we are apologetic, and this is what the corrective actions we have taken, and this place, we have done nothing wrong, and we stand by what we say. I think many companies, including sometimes we find ourselves, have just not been able to respond fast enough, and then the false narrative is so large that it becomes a little bit of a challenge.
Sure. Uh, yeah. What is your advice on long form content creation? I think this is more to say that, typically we use this statement that brands should act as publishers. So, and as advertising content or as content meant for marketing, they try to create long form content. So any tips from you on that?
Yeah, so I think I mean, we live this question all the time because we are huge in breaking news. So sometimes you say, oh, digital is shortening the people attention span and give only short. I think that's just a 50% of the truth. I won't say it's a lie. It's just a 50% of the truth. To interpret it as 100% the truth will be wrong, even for brands who are, I'm very happy they're investing in better storytelling experience of their brands, of their services, of their product, which is very needed, because there's nothing better than telling a great story. And that's where the newsroom and non-newsroom experience the common. If you have invested in good storytellers, which means if you have people who can combine style with substance, they are good in English language, just the basic thing, they are good in English language. They are not telling your story either in a very boring form, so it's truthful and very in-depth but very boringly crafted. Then you will get the wrong inference of, oh, I gave long form but nobody's buying it. I have everything, but it's been crafted very badly. It's like a great movie which has not been edited well. uh, So I think if you invest in just 2 or 3 great storytellers and you tick on the right boxes while hiring those, like do you combine, as I said, I mean, we can have a longer discussion later on, but which what I meant to say is that if your first paragraphs grasp my attention, does it have very high curiosity content, do you have the great headline, do you have the nice visuals, your long form will work very well. You very well. There's just no, sometimes long form just drags because people who can write short form are not often the people who can write good long form. And if you have the good long form and there are enough examples in the world who can do great long form, you will do very well in that also.
Sure. So one question which I wanted to ask, and that is again coming from brands acting as publishers' point of view, how can we increase shelf life of content?
Yeah. No, and it's a very important question. And again, we have that all the time. I think the uh, I think there are two ways. One is that your basic content itself has 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 covered as many aspects as you have tried to in your time. I know there is infinite, almost infinite aspects to every issue, but you cannot go there. But let's let's assume that if there were 10 aspects you could think of, but you have covered at least 4 or 5 of them. But what is even more critical is that, and which is very easy to do in digital, it was not so easy to do it in video, and is that have you given enough links for people to dive into? So Rohit said, oh, there's a great research here. I'm just writing 2 lines, but here is a 50 page. So RP is interested in that 50 page, but RP's colleague is not interested. I have catered to both. And here is a video on this. Here is a other publications who have written about it. So suppose I write a 1,000 word. Actually, in that 1,000 word, I can give RP 10,000 word. I can give somebody's colleague 2,000 word, and I can give somebody just 500 words. So that way, you actually are catering to very stretchable audiences without shortchanging any one of them. And I think digital offers those blue links are a great way to be able to cater to different types of audiences. And lastly, I would say that if you should watch the behavior of your audiences and feed more. So don't just post and go away. Come back every day and check. Oh, people are reading. So which means that you have enough backend to check your audiences. And if you have good backend, which is very cheap right now, the technologies are becoming cheaper and more smarter, then you can keep adding more and feeding more. And I think you will have a very rewarding journey if you do that.
Sure. Thank you very much. Uh, I think more questions coming your way. That's purely because of the love they have for you and the brand that you manage.
Great. Thanks, Happy. Thanks.
Uh, how do you make successful content work more harder? So I think this is if I'm interpreting it right, once you know that some article is working better than the other one, or
Yes.
as compared to the other one, how do you make it travel more, or
Yes.
get
Yes.
consumed more?
Yes. No, no, it's a very important question. And till until about 5 years ago, I would say it was almost unresolvable beyond a point. Because what you do in print, what you do in television, by the time you know which audience has watched what more, either it was too late or too limited. But now it's no more. So if you have really invested in sophisticated audience tracking backend softwares, which we can get into a separate thing, but it's as I said, the cost of it is falling every day, and the smartest question of them is getting better every day. So it's really worth investing into. Then then you can really make your content work harder because you will really know. And yeah, sorry, another thing, that your storyteller who has created should not go away after creating one great story. You should keep him or her with you, because then you should use them to add more. So you may find, as I said, that I'll give you an example of how Kamala Harris is like, people can't read enough of her in Tamil Nadu, but maybe not in Jammu and Kashmir, right? So you make that content much harder in Tamil Nadu, and also at the same time give enough bits in Jammu and Kashmir or Delhi or Delhi to say, look, you may want to read more about Kamala Harris, because there is this and this more. So there is enough to lure now through social media, through your Facebook page, through your Twitter. And there I mean, I hope I'm not giving this a secret tip, but one thing which is extremely critical is your headline writers. I see great content, even in Times of India, outside Times of India, even in brand communication, falling because your catch line is poor. And on mobile phone, catch line can make or mar your great content. You may have a great 500 word article or a video riding behind not so great headline. And if so, I would say you invest very heavily on headline givers or a catch line givers. They should have the best combo of information, analysis, and emotional connect. If there's no, if information is poor and emotion is high, people will think it's fake. If information is strong and emotional content is a 50-50 balance, you have hit bullseye. So a great headline followed by a great content which is stretchable. So from 500 it can go up to 5,000 on demand. I think you will make your content work really hard for you.
Sure. That's a great perspective, I personally feel. Um, so, as an editor, now we have a lot of technology platforms to give you all the data. So, how do you decide between data and gut?
Yeah, though it's a very, and we struggle with it all the time. I think you need to take a hard call, otherwise it'll get very confusing. That look, at any point in time, if on a, let's say, a device, I'm just talking from a mobile phone perspective, that's really 90% of our digital audience now. Uh, you say if RP is my audience and he is going to see 5 news items, I'm just hypothetically speaking, you may be able to see 10. At least 2 will be gut, so that that whole thing of creating a noise chamber, fake news chamber, that RP is getting to read only what he wants to read, even though he should read 2 other items, is not over catered to. Personalization does not become a tool to get into a dark chamber, or I wouldn't say dark, but let's say limited chamber, even if it's a bright chamber. So I think it's important to, and but also keep monitoring your audience metrics very far. And right now you can get a real time picture of who's reading what, but you may realize, oh, people are reading too much of this, but they're ignoring these 5 other very important things in politics and society, on health, on COVID, which I must serve right now. So I think you should put a hard matrix right upfront in your brain, that in 90% of the time I will do 40% of gut,
Hmm.
and then it's easier to solve within those matrix.
Sure. So we don't want to, but we will let you go. No, great session, Rohit, and was quite a nice departure from slides that we were looking at for last 3 days. I also feel I think audience also felt it slightly relaxing and comforting. So we will have to invite you some in our next session as well, whenever that happens. And thank you very much on behalf of all the audience that we have here.
Thanks so much, Abby. Thanks so much for having us. And I really, really, really liked interacting with you. Look forward.